All right, let's dive into Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451. You've shared some really interesting excerpts and notes with me on this book. So let's sort of unpack it. What makes this dystopian world tick and see if there are, any parallels to our own world today.
I think, one of the things that's so fascinating about this book is that Bradbury goes beyond just imagining a world without books. He really explores what are the consequences of a society that chooses comfort and entertainment over knowledge, over critical thinking, and we see it all through the eyes of Guy Montag, a fireman whose job it is to actually start fires, not put them out.
Yeah, and it's interesting because in your notes, you highlighted how Montag initially seems quite content in this role, right?
Yeah.
Like he follows the rules, he believes in what he's doing. So what do you think Bradbury's trying to say here about the dangers of blind conformity?
Well, it's a pretty powerful reminder that societal norms can be incredibly persuasive, even when they might go against our own, our own intuition or values. And I think Montag at the beginning represents that danger of just accepting things at face value without really questioning the deeper implications.
Right, and that's where we meet Clarisse, right? This really free-thinking young woman who just sees the world with such a childlike curiosity. And you had marked that passage where she rubs a dandelion under her chin to see if she's in love. It's such a simple act, but it feels so revolutionary in this world where people seem to have really lost touch with those simple pleasures.
Yeah, she kind of represents that inherent human need for connection, for authentic experience, which has been kind of suppressed in this technology-driven society. And through her interactions with Montag, it forces him to confront this void in his own life. He starts to sense that something is missing, even if he can't quite articulate it yet.
And it's interesting how her disappearance from the story so early on it's really unsettling. It almost suggests that any spark of individuality or nonconformity is quickly extinguished in this society.
Oh, absolutely. And it's a stark contrast to Montag's wife, Mildred. I mean, she is totally immersed in this very superficial world of television and technology. You noted that scene. It's a very chilling scene where she refers to the people on her parlor walls as her family. And Bradbury wrote this in the 1950s, but doesn't it just feel so eerily similar to our own obsession with screens and social media today?
Yeah, it's almost like he predicted this potential for technology to isolate us, right?
Yeah.
To create this sense of pseudo-connection while actually distancing us from real human interaction.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And that scene where Montag's trying to engage with Mildred about the woman who chose to burn with her books, it's so telling. Because she's completely detached, she's more concerned with the potential disruption to her routines than she is with the loss of human life or the destruction of knowledge.
It's really a chilling depiction of how apathy and just this constant barrage of entertainment can numb us to the world around us. Which brings us to Captain Beatty, Montag's captain. You underline so many passages about him. He's a fascinating character because he's clearly well-read, yet he's passionately defending book burning.
Yeah, I mean, Beatty really represents this complex side to the dystopia. He understands the power of books, but he also sees them as a threat to the stability and the happiness of society. His argument is that knowledge and different opinions inevitably lead to conflict and unhappiness.
You highlighted his lecture to Montag where he talks about how society chose this path, right?
Yeah.
They opted for shorter attention spans, more entertainment, less critical thought. It's disturbing because he almost seems to believe his own justifications. So what do you think Bradbury's trying to say about the role of leadership in shaping these societal norms?
Well, I think it raises the question of, how much responsibility do leaders have in either challenging or reinforcing, potentially harmful ideologies? Beatty, in a way, kind of embodies that danger of intellectualism without empathy, knowledge that is used to control rather than to liberate.
And, this lecture really kind of sets the stage for that turning point in the story when Montag is forced to burn his own house.
Yeah.
His own sanctuary. And it's interesting because you noted not just the act of burning, but also Mildred's reaction to it.
Right, yeah. Because her primary concern is the destruction of her family on those parlor walls. It really shows the extent to which she's been conditioned to prioritize this superficial entertainment over genuine human connection, even with her own husband.
It's such a powerful and unsettling moment that really kind of drives home those dehumanizing effects of this society. And from here, Montag's journey takes this really dramatic turn, doesn't it?
Yeah, he goes from being a cog in the machine to actively rebelling against it. And I think this is where we really see the transformation begin.
But before we jump into that, let's explore this turning point a little bit further. You marked that scene with the mechanical hound.
Yeah, that mechanical hound is just like straight out of a nightmare, isn't it? It's this really intense way that Bradbury shows how technology can be used to, like, watch everyone and control them.
Yeah, it's terrifying. And you pointed out that part where a car full of teenagers almost runs Montag over, and they're just completely unfazed by it.
Hmm.
What do you think Bradbury's saying about, like, how desensitized people are in this society? Like, they've totally lost their empathy.
It feels like he's warning us about what could happen if we get too disconnected from reality, you know? If we're so focused on our own pleasure that we forget about, well, being human.
It's like this horrible glimpse into the future of their world. And then, of course, the city gets bombed, which Bradbury kind of hinted at all along.
Yeah, and even in that moment of total destruction, you pointed out the small detail. Montag can't remember where he met Mildred. It's like their whole relationship was just empty, and it shows how this technology-filled life made them so disconnected.
Yeah, it's really sad, but it makes sense for their story to end that way. And then, in the middle of all this chaos, Montag finds the book people. These are people who have memorized entire books so they can save them for the future. It's hopeful, but also kind of sad at the same time. What do you think about that?
It's weird, right? They're like walking libraries, which shows just how strong human memory can be, but it also makes you realize how fragile knowledge is, especially when people are trying to destroy it.
That makes me think about today, with all our digital information. Everything feels so easy to find, but it makes you wonder about the importance of, like, really preserving knowledge. What if we lose access to it all? Or what if someone changes it without us knowing?
It really raises the question of what knowledge really is and how we choose to save it and pass it on. The book people show us that maybe relying only on technology isn't the best way.
And they're not just trying to memorize the books. They want to rebuild society based on knowledge and understanding. It's like they know you can't erase the past, but you can learn from it.
What really struck me was that they're not just memorizing words, they're really trying to understand the books they carry inside them. They see books as more than just words. They're a way to connect with the past, learn from mistakes, and think critically.
You highlighted that part where Montag is struggling to remember the book of Ecclesiastes. It's such a human moment, you know?
Yeah.
He's wrestling with all these big ideas and trying to figure out his place in the world. He's not just taking in information anymore, he's adding to it.
Exactly. He's becoming part of how knowledge is created and shared. And this change, it doesn't happen overnight, you know? He has doubts, he makes mistakes, but he keeps going because he has this new purpose.
And he's seeing the world differently, too, right? He notices the beauty of nature, the simple joy of talking to someone, the importance of connecting with other people. It's like all his senses are alive again after being numbed by all that fake entertainment.
It reminds us that we need to slow down, pay attention, and really experience the world around us. It's like that quote from the book you underlined. We need not to be told anything, we need to be shown. And Montag is finally being shown a different way to live, a different way to think, and it's changing him in a huge way.
And then there's that powerful scene at the end where the city's destroyed and Montag sees the faces of the book people reflected in the firelight. It's like he sees who they really are, these symbols of hope, these protectors of knowledge.
What's so amazing about that scene is the contrast between the city being destroyed and the feeling of hope that Montag has. It's like the bombing has cleared the way for a fresh start, a chance to build something better and more meaningful. And this mission, rebuilding society from nothing, saving knowledge in a world that doesn't want it, it won't be easy. But they're not giving up. They're determined to keep the knowledge alive and pass it on to future generations.
It makes you wonder what they'll build, what kind of society will come from the ashes of the old one. What role will technology play in this new world?
That's the great thing about Bradbury's ending. He doesn't give us all the answers. It's up to us, the readers, to think about these questions and imagine what could be.
It's a powerful invitation to think about our own values, our own relationship with knowledge and technology, and the kind of future we want to create. And before we finish up our deep dive, I want to go back to something you said earlier. You mentioned how Bradbury shows us with Mildred and those teenagers in that car, how technology can really mess with our feelings, make us less sensitive to things. It makes me think about us today and how we're always surrounded by information and entertainment. Does it ever feel like it's hard to, like, really stay present and connected to the world around us?
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's so easy to just get sucked into that constant flow of information, to kind of zone out and just take in whatever's in front of us. But I think Fahrenheit 451 is like a wake-up call, you know? It reminds us that we have a choice. We can choose to be engaged, to ask questions, to look for different points of view, to really be a part of shaping how we understand the world.
And that's what those book people are all about, right? They chose to be the protectors of knowledge, the
Yeah.
ones who start the fire, but not in a bad way, you know. They ignite curiosity and critical thinking, that passion for learning. So thinking about today with so much information everywhere, what do you think are the most important things we can do to keep that fire burning?
Well, I think it starts with just being aware, paying attention to how we're using information and technology. Are we letting those algorithms control us, or are we actively searching for different perspectives and questioning what we think we know?
You highlighted a bunch of parts in the book where Bradbury talks about the importance of slowing down, enjoying the simple things, and really connecting with the world around us. Like that scene where Montag and the book people are walking along the railroad tracks, talking about what the stars mean. It's a quiet moment in the middle of all the chaos, and it says so much about the power of connecting with each other and finding meaning, even when things are tough.
It's a good reminder that even though the world feels like it's falling apart sometimes, there's still beauty and meaning in just talking to each other and experiencing nature. It's up to us to create those connections, to find those quiet moments, even with all the distractions around us.
It's like Bradbury is telling us to be the change we want to see,
What?
live by the values of critical thinking, empathy, and loving to learn, and to pass those values on, just like the book people are doing.
Exactly. And it's not about being stuck in the past or getting rid of technology altogether. It's about finding that balance, using technology as a tool to connect and learn instead of letting it control us or disconnect us from what truly matters.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Fahrenheit 451, I keep coming back to this question. What are we going to choose to carry forward? What stories, what knowledge, what values will we share to shape the future?
That's a big question and one we all have to answer ourselves. But I think Bradbury's work gives us a guide. It reminds us about the power of human connection, critical thinking, and the search for knowledge. And as long as we keep that fire burning, I think there's hope for a future where knowledge and understanding win out over ignorance and fear.
Well said. And if you're feeling inspired to explore these ideas further, I highly recommend reading Fahrenheit 451 for yourself. It's a timeless book that has spoken to people for over 70 years, and it still has so much to teach us about the challenges and possibilities of our own time. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.